My grandfather told me something once that I'll never forget. Not because it was the first scary story I ever heard, though it was. Not because it explains how he lost his brother, though it does. But because it changed the way I see the world. You know how it is. You hear stories on TV. You overhear conversations in coffee shops. People talk about strange creatures and unexplained phenomena, and you think to yourself, that's not real. They're exaggerating, or mistaken, or just plain lying. But then something happens, something that connects all those dots you didn't even know were there. Maybe it happens to you directly, or maybe you hear the same story again and again from different people in different places. It doesn't take long before you realize the world is much stranger than you ever imagined. This is a story my grandfather told me, and for years I didn't believe a word of it, even though he swore it was true. It wasn't until I started researching online that I began to believe. I started finding other stories, almost identical to his. It didn't take long before I believed in what some people call the Wendigo. That's not what my grandfather called it, of course. He never used the internet in his life, wouldn't even know what the consensus had settled on calling these things. When he had to call it something other than it or that creature, he used the old name his own grandfather taught him, the hunger that walks. But let me tell you the story the way he told it to me. We were out trapping one winter, hunting lynx for their pelts. We lived on a timber claim in northern Ontario, and sometimes we'd have to supplement our income during the lean months. We'd go out every few days because we needed the money. Sometimes, while checking the trap lines, we'd come across a moose or caribou and take it. The Forest Service didn't mind, and it could feed our family for weeks. Anyway, we were finishing our rounds one evening, heading home on foot because we didn't have a truck or snowmobile back then. We'd cut through the forest, and that's when we found it. Blood everywhere, splattered on the trees, on the snow, in the ice of the frozen creek, everywhere. At first, we thought it was wolves. We'd seen it before. They hunt in packs and take down deer, or even moose sometimes. The worst was when they bred with feral dogs that people abandoned in the woods. But this wasn't like that. When wolves attack something, they do it efficiently. They pick off something weak, sick, old, or small. They'll corner it somewhere it can't escape, then drive it straight to the alpha. That animal might not even see the alpha, might just feel its throat gone, then drop dead. It's quick. It's clean. This wasn't that. Something had attacked a group of caribou. Wolves won't do that. They'd get too much fight. There were 4, maybe 5 bodies, just torn apart. You'd see a head here, a leg there, a torso over there. Predators don't do that. They don't leave scraps behind. Whatever did this hadn't done it for food. It did it for pleasure. But we didn't understand that yet. We saw the carnage and thought it was something we needed to deal with. I remember my grandfather telling me to go home. He thought it was a pack of feral dogs. But I wasn't leaving him, and I sure as hell wasn't walking 3 kilometers through those woods alone, with nothing but a .22 and a hunting knife. I was only 14 at the time, so a .22 rifle was about all I could handle reliably. Grandfather had the shotgun, and he wasn't going anywhere without it. It took me a while to convince him, but finally we started tracking whatever did this. It wasn't hard either. We just followed the blood. Either this thing had been injured by a caribou before it got away, or it had dragged one for over a kilometer. I don't know which. I know I'd never seen my grandfather scared. before that night. We started hearing sounds. I've been in forests all over the world, and I've never heard sounds like I heard that night. Things screaming, moose and foxes and ravens and owls, just terrified. Now keep in mind, this is maybe midnight or 1 a.m., except for owls and some nocturnal animals. Nothing should have been awake. But they weren't just awake, they were fleeing. I saw flocks of ravens that night fly straight into trees, just trying to escape. We came across a wolf pack, almost shot a couple, thinking they were what we were hunting. But then we saw they were running toward us. They ran right past us, didn't even notice. Then some caribou did the same. Then rabbits, squirrels, foxes, even a couple of black bears. These animals should have been eating each other, and the only thing they cared about was getting away. We should have realized then that whatever we were tracking wasn't something we were supposed to see. It wasn't something we could kill. I don't know why we didn't just go home. I guess we were curious. I think that was my grandfather's nature, to go toward trouble, to fight. And knowing what I knew about what he did during the war, my nature was to stay close to him. We finally reached an open valley. It was normally a wheat field, but it wasn't in season, so it was just flat snow. We saw the tracks then. Most of the animals fleeing had trampled over the field, but where the caribou blood was, nothing had taken a single step, like they were leaving it for us to find. The tracks were strange. Whatever made them couldn't have weighed more than 50 kilos, but that didn't mean much. A wolverine weighing 15 kilos nearly tore my throat out once, and all that means is it's quick and hard to hit. We followed the tracks, and it didn't take long to find where it was hiding. There was this old trapper's cabin at the top of a ridge. Half of it had been crushed by a fallen tree, and nobody had lived there for years. We'd found squatters there sometimes, or addicts looking for a place to get high. We got within 50 meters and heard this sound, a screeching, clicking kind of sound. It was sort of made up of two different sounds. One high-pitched screech, another low-pitched growl. It was making both at the same time. We got within 20 meters and heard another sound. I remember thinking it sounded like someone tearing paper, while another person was sloshing water in a bucket back and forth. Grandfather looked at me, crouched down, and whispered that I needed to stay behind him because we were about to corner it. Any animal will fight when cornered, especially a predator, but we could tell by the tracks it was alone. He told me it was probably a rabid wolverine or fisher. The plan was simple: sneak up while it's feeding, shoot it, keep shooting until it doesn't move, then cut its throat. If it got to Grandfather, my job was to shoot it or stab it to get it off him. So he approached, and I was right behind him, just slightly to the side so I could see what it was. I wish to this day I hadn't looked. It was crouched over a carcass, tearing off flesh and throwing what it didn't immediately eat to the side. Blood everywhere, glistening in the moonlight. It was pale white, humanoid, but not quite human. It had arms and legs like a person, but it crouched like a primate. Its hands weren't normal. They had elongated fingers with claws at the end. We saw this, and Grandfather hesitated. He wasn't about to shoot what might be a person. So he cleared his throat, trying to get it to turn around. I swear, all sound just ceased. I'd never heard true silence before that moment, and never after. For 2 seconds, Nothing made any sound, which made it all the louder when it turned around, made this shrill cry, and leaped onto Grandfather. He got a shot off. I think he missed, or if he hit it, the thing didn't care. But it was on him, tearing him apart. I started shooting with my .22 point blank, but it barely bled. I got off 5 rounds, then started hitting it with the rifle butt. It wasn't budging. It didn't even register I was there. It clawed at Grandfather, taking off chunks of his flesh. Started on his chest, ripping off skin, then moved up. Tore off his throat, his nose, his eyes, scalped him. Then started digging in, ripping off the bottom half of his jaw, the small bones in his neck, then his ribs. I don't exactly remember what happened next, but somehow Grandfather's knife ended up in the thing's shoulder, and Grandfather's body ended up on my back. I was running, and by God, I was running faster than I'd ever run before or since. I knew it was following me. I could hear it screeching and moaning behind me. I heard tree branches cracking and snapping. It sounded like someone taking an axe to every single tree I passed. Eventually, I tripped onto a road. I looked up, and there was a logging crew's camp, about a dozen men around a fire. I screamed and cried, and they rushed over. The foreman looked at me and said, "What's on your back?" As he said it, he saw what was left of Grandfather. Most of his head, his torso, but nothing below the waist. Suddenly we heard it screeching, and the foreman grabbed me. Grandfather's body fell to the ground. I was fighting the man, crying because I thought we could still save him somehow. But Grandfather had been gone before I even picked him up. The foreman had to physically lift me and throw me inside before I would come with him. He and his crew barricaded themselves inside, locking doors and readying rifles. The foreman looked at me, demanding to know what happened, what was out there. But I didn't know what to tell him. He pieced enough together to understand there was something dangerous outside. All the lights in the cabin went on. Someone called the police. They'd be there in 20 minutes. We looked outside and saw it walk in front of the fire they'd made. "I don't know what it is," one of them said. It looked vaguely ape-like. Suddenly something crashed through the window. We shot at it, but it wasn't the creature. It was a dog's body. Just the body, no head or legs. We started pushing furniture in front of doors and windows as we heard something in the attached shed. Someone said the door had been left open, and we heard metal and wood getting ripped apart. We put a table and chairs in front of the shed door. It banged around some more, then went quiet, not silent like before. We could hear it moving around. The men were talking, making sure rifles were loaded. Someone handed me a revolver, and no sooner had I cocked the hammer than we heard glass shatter upstairs. Then we heard it screech again, louder this time, without the echo fading out, because it was inside with us. We all rushed to the stairway door and got there just as the creature did. It opened the door slightly, and 5 or 6 men slammed into it. It got its hand through. Someone with a shotgun put the barrel right up to its wrist and pulled the trigger. Cut its hand clean off. That only made it angrier. It started pushing on the door, clawing. We were on one side pushing as hard as we could, and it was on the other doing the same. The wood wasn't going to hold. Someone yelled for us to keep our heads down. Suddenly, the top half of the door was just gone. My ears were ringing, splinters everywhere. 2 or 3 of them had just unloaded on the top of that door. I don't know where it went after that. the police arrived. I was still frozen against that door, what was left of it, and the sun was up before they pried me off. They put me in a hospital for a while. Many people talked to me, but I didn't talk back. Not for a long, long time. When I got back to the timber claim, I got work from the logging company. We didn't talk much about that thing, but I joined the army when I was 20, and the foreman sat me down for a drink as a send-off. I asked him right away what the police had told him. The story they went with was a wild animal, probably a wolverine, or maybe a bear that had wandered too far north. I asked about the hand. He looked at me, stunned. He told me the hand never made it back to the station. The officer who had it crashed his truck into a tree, died on impact. The hand was never found, probably taken by scavengers. And the police, when they acknowledged the hand existed at all, said it was simply the paw of a bear that looked like a human hand. I never talked to that foreman again. I guess he went missing when I was in basic training, and the police never found him. They said he owed some people money and ran away. But I don't think it's that simple. I never went back to those woods. I wouldn't, even if I had the entire Canadian Armed Forces at my back. And that was my grandfather's story of the Wendigo, or the hunger that walks, or whatever you want to call it. I'm still not sure what to think. But as I grew older and lost other family members, I don't think my grandfather felt he had anything left. Maybe he thought he might as well settle old scores. He went back into those woods one winter, and he never came back. The RCMP was called and did their investigation, but I knew they weren't really looking. They never found him. I'm 22 and a recent college graduate from Vermont. I live in a semi-rural area, about 30 minutes from the closest supermarket. I go to school in Boston, not the nice part, the part where drug users are common and police presence is more reassuring than threatening. I've seen some things, for sure. I should mention here that I'm not small. I'm 6'2" and 230 pounds, mostly muscle, though I could stand to lose 10 pounds or so. I love to drink beer, eat wings, and being the responsible student I am, I picked a real major, engineering. I interned for a tech startup, doing IT work, getting paid $18 an hour. College is expensive, so I deliver food at night after work ends. It's a small pizza chain with an absurdly large delivery radius, about 30 minutes from my apartment and 10 minutes from the coast. My place is north of there, and we deliver probably another hour north of my apartment. I'm actually typing this at work between checking network logs. But anyway, the farther north you go from the pizza place, the more rural it gets. I work until close, and this happened at around 10:15 p.m. I'm in the back, folding boxes like a good employee, when the counter girl comes back with a delivery slip. She tells me the customer sounded weird on the phone, like he was talking through cloth or through his hands, kind of gurgling. My Boston experience immediately makes me think drug user, though around here, it's more likely to be pills. Automatically assuming some weird interaction, I look at the address. It's basically in the middle of nowhere. I'm annoyed because I don't want to drive that far. But whatever. Rent doesn't pay itself. Not to mention, it's the strangest order I've ever seen. The guy ordered a large pizza with literally every meat topping we have: anchovies, ground beef, ham, sausage, pepperoni, bacon. Like $18 worth of toppings on one pizza. I go to ask the counter girl if this is correct, and she thinks so, though she couldn't really understand him clearly. She's about 17, so I cut her some slack. Maybe she was distracted when she took the call, so I decide to call them back to confirm. I dial, and it rings 5, 10, 20, 30 times. No answer. I hang up and call again. This time it goes straight to, "The number you have dialed does not have a voicemail box set up. Goodbye." Okay then. My manager decides to make the pizza as ordered, and we'd proceed from there. I go out to deliver a different order to this absurdly nice couple who invited me in for drinks, but I don't drink when working. I was hoping someone else would have delivered that weird order by the time I got back. Surprise, no one did, and it was my turn again. Reluctantly, I take the pizza and get in my car. I enter the address in my phone. It's on a side road adjacent to what locals call the State Forest, which despite the name is actually about 1,000 acres of dense woods. It's about 35 minutes away, basically the edge of our delivery range. I put on some metal and crank my Subaru stereo, taking off toward this road. If you're not from a rural area, this is hard to explain. Winter in deep woods is terrifying. There's never a single sound unless something larger than a raccoon is moving. It's just you and complete silence. Finally, I arrive at the address. There are a few houses on this road, but they sit on large plots, maybe 10 acres each, so they're spaced way out. I'm looking for number 847. I pass 840, then a long stretch of nothing. Then it picks up again at 855. What the hell? I just want to get this over with and get the next delivery without encountering some pillhead over a pizza. I try calling the number again, and it rings and rings, then stops. Someone picked up, but there's no voice. Instead, I hear this buzzing or humming sound. It's hooked up to my car stereo and getting louder and louder until I hang up because I don't want to blow my speakers. The windows are fogging at this point. I'm pulled over between two houses. I roll down the windows, and I'm hit with this smell. Decaying garbage mixed with sewage. It's so disgusting I literally gag. I put the car in first and start pulling toward the next house, trying to escape the smell. At the end of the driveway, there's a post with a light on top. My plan is to pull into this driveway, knock, and ask if maybe they gave the wrong number over the phone. Makes sense for these kinds of people. I'm probably 75 feet away when I see someone step out of the darkness into the light at the bottom of the driveway. I sigh with relief. Thank God it's the guy who ordered. I'm expecting him to be stumbling around, acting completely out of it. But he's actually pretty calm. I stop the car about 10 feet away. He's wearing a big black coat that looks 3 sizes too big, even though he's got probably 4 inches on me. I don't look at him at first. I grab the pizza, step out, then grab the receipt to prepare change if he pays cash. Hey, sorry about the wait and all the calls. Long delivery, you know? No response. I realize I should be watching him, considering all the red flags. The smell is overwhelming, but I know it's not trash day. I get the pizza on the roof of my car, and he's standing there under the light on the opposite side. I finally pay attention and get a good look at him. The guy is massive. He's wearing no shoes, has ripped jeans with stains everywhere. I try to look at his face, and his eyes seem to be sunken in. I can't even see the pupils with the light overhead. They're just black voids. I'm getting seriously creeped out because he still hasn't moved or said a word. I stop what I'm doing and stare at him. He's staring right back with those creepy eyes. His head is sort of bobbing side to side, but not fluidly, more like a car door. How it stops partway open, then you push it again, and it jerks to fully open. I watch his head do this for about 15 seconds. I'm starting to get more uneasy between the smell, the head movement, the eyes, and him completely ignoring me. I stand there frozen. Without breaking eye contact, I take my phone out and hold it low against the roof so I can look at both him and my phone. Curiosity overwhelming me, I go to recent calls and redial his number. The phone starts ringing, but I don't hear it anywhere nearby. Wait, I do. It's coming from the woods. I can hear a faint, distant cell phone ringing about 40 yards into the forest. I'm kicking myself at this point, almost losing it. The guy's just standing there, still doing the head thing, but I swear I see him smiling. Finally, I get the courage to speak. Can you please come get this? Also, I think you dropped your phone or something in the woods. I laugh nervously, still thinking maybe this guy just took too many pills and buried something sketchy in the woods. I see his mouth open, head still bobbing, feet planted. He makes this low guttural grunt, then a high grunt, then low again. They're sort of quiet, like someone clearing their throat. At this point, I'm ready to bolt to the driver's seat if needed. Just as I go to redial that phone again, I hear him talking. That phone's not mine. The pause between phone's not and mine was way too long. Phone's not sounded like one word. Mine came out an octave higher. My mind goes into full panic mode. My knees are weak. I'm about to pass out. I push the pizza to the far side of the roof away from me. Sir, you're freaking me out. I got nothing valuable on me. Just take this so I can leave. When I say this, his head bobbing stops. His eyes are burning a hole through me. He opens his mouth again. What? His what? I'm stunned. It was his. The phone was his. The guy starts coming toward my car, not stepping, but like one huge muscle spasm propelling him forward. The phone was his. He repeats. I'm on the verge of tears. The guy jerks forward again, closer to the car. Phone's not his anymore. I blubber wordlessly. Then I scream, I'm calling the cops if you don't leave. I see him smile, that creepy smile, and without moving his mouth, I hear him saying in a completely different voice, a voice I've never heard, go away. Stop following me. I will call the police. In another jerky motion, the thing reaches forward, takes the pizza off the roof, and places a couple of coins on it. They're surrounded by this dark liquid that spreads across the roof. I don't think. Just get in the car and peel out down the road. I leave the hot bag, everything. Don't even close my door properly. I get down the road, going about 80 for a quarter mile, then pull a U-turn because I don't want to get more lost with that psycho out there. I whip back past where I'd been, and he's gone. I finally reach the end of the road. There's a stop sign to merge with the main road. I look right to make sure it's clear. Then left. That thing's face is 12 inches from mine. I tactically have a heart attack and peel off down the road. I finally make it back to the pizza place, shaking. I smoke just to calm down, something I never do while working. I walk in the front door. The counter girl says, "Hey, that guy from the forest house called back. He said you forgot some food, but he only ordered the pizza, right? He wants you to come back." I start crying. I look at my phone. 14 missed calls from his number. All the voicemails are empty except the last one. All I hear is ragged breathing and those low grunting sounds. I'm bawling in front of this teenage girl, but I don't care. I sit for 10 minutes trying to calm down, then remember the change he left on the roof. I go out to the car and turn on my phone's flashlight. The roof is covered in this viscous, weird fluid that smells like copper. I throw up. In the gap between the trunk and rear window, I find the coins. They're covered in that same syrupy substance, and stuck to them is what looks like a small chunk of tissue. I open my car door, and my blood turns to ice. There's a single line of this fluid going from the front quarter panel to the driver's side door. That thing tried to open my door when it was next to me at the stop sign. I go back inside, crying harder. I tell the counter girl to try calling the number. She tries repeatedly, but now it goes straight to voicemail. The next morning, I gave the number to my uncle, a state trooper. He says the number is a burner phone, paid in cash, basically untraceable. It appears to be turned off now. I sleep with the lights on these days. I was 25, testing new gear in the Ozarks of Arkansas. Some equipment I'd been saving for, boots, a tactical vest, even a gas mask. It was like Christmas. Being where I was and wanting to field test some gear, I had my rifle ready. It wouldn't do much against bears, but it would handle coyotes or bobcats. I had magazines I'd assembled myself and wanted to test them. I had targets rolled up in my pack and a solid set of survival gear: compass, topo map, thermal blanket, extra clothes, MREs, canteen, and hydration pack. Basically prepared for anything. I was having a great time, testing equipment, practicing tactics. I wandered near a creek bed and decided to practice some field maneuvers. It was late summer, so no danger of getting gear wet in the dry stream bed. After triple checking my safety, I did a series of slides and uphill runs in full gear. Needless to say, I got winded quick. I stood there panting in that dry creek, deciding to check my position with my map and compass to set a course home. While reorienting myself, I caught wind of a smell. At first I thought it was my sweat, but the smell quickly evolved into something worse. A dark undercurrent of rot, deep notes of animal musk, a heavy score of raw garbage, punctuated by my garlicky sweat and topped with something between skunk and rotten onions. I went into full alert mode, popped some caffeine pills for focus, pulled a magazine from my pack. It seemed fine, but if I was going to shoot something, I didn't want any risk of jamming. The smell made me gag. I nearly threw up those pills. It was that strong. Whatever the source, it was mobile and getting closer. I pulled my mask up from around my neck. It helped a bit, but wasn't 100% airtight, so some smell got through. I walked cautiously along the creek bed toward the shallowest slope, listening for sounds. I definitely heard something shuffling around above me, something bigger than my rifle was rated for. It was a constant snuffling, grunting, and sloppy crunching through bark and leaves, all mixed with that smell. My mind jumped to big bear, possibly even grizzly, though we shouldn't have those here. Let me tell you about Ozark big bears straight from my dad. My dad's lived in the Ozarks for 60 years, and only two things have ever truly scared him: fatherhood and the big bears. According to him, native black bears were hunted nearly to extinction in the 50s and 60s. To fix this, the State Fish and Game Commission released 300 bears into the Ozark and Boston Mountains. Their website says they were all black bears. My dad insists that's BS. According to him, more than a few were brown bears. They interbred with remaining local bears and the reintroduced blacks. Thanks to hybrid vigor, the resulting offspring were bigger and meaner than their parents. And were they ever fertile? When I asked him to prove it, he went upstairs and came back with a folder labeled BB. He pulled out Polaroids and asked me to look. I saw a big black and brown something rooting around a clothesline. Dad pointed to the clothesline about 50 feet away, between the two poles, about 6 feet off the ground. It was the same one in the picture. The something's shoulder was about a foot below the line, despite being farther in the background. I looked through other pictures, one rooting through trash, another barely concealed by trees. Details were hard to make out because of shakiness, but I was convinced. Dad told me 2 things about big bears. Big bears are dumb. Something about being hybrids makes them less cautious than normal bears. They're not afraid of people, which makes them more dangerous. They also smell terrible. You'll smell them coming a mile away. If you smell a big bear, get inside, get upstairs, bring a shotgun with slugs. If you see one and you're not home or don't have a shotgun with slugs, climb a tree. They're faster than you, so running is useless. I tell you all this because after 25 years, I'd finally proved my dad wrong. Well, half wrong. There's something in the Ozarks that matches his pictures, but whatever they are, they sure aren't bears. Back to my story. I would have stayed in that creek and waited for the thing to leave, but light was already fading. As bad as Dad made big bears sound, I wasn't staying with a possibly rabid one after dark. I opted to climb the opposite side of the creek. I had to scramble over rocks and half stand, half lean against the slope, but I figured that would be extra protection against whatever was out there. I got glimpses of it as I climbed, but this was my first good look. I couldn't stop staring. Like I said before, this was not a bear. It was bear-like, but not a bear. I've been into sci-fi my whole life, so when I saw this thing, my nerd brain went, "Oh, a slitheen." Except it wasn't. It looked like if a gorilla, a grizzly, and a sloth had an offspring on top of a garbage heap. It had a long snout like a stubby trunk, with big angular shoulders, feet that looked like manhole covers, covered in dirty matted fur, and a body like a furry blimp. Its fur was charcoal black and dark brown, full of mats and dirt clumps. I stared at it for so long, drinking in details, trying to make sense of it. For 2 to 3 minutes, it somehow didn't notice me. Jesus, these things were dumb. I remember feeling relief. If it hadn't noticed me scrambling out of a rocky creek, it probably wouldn't notice me sneaking away. It's going to sound ridiculous, but then I farted. The something stopped. My breath stopped. My heart stopped. The only sound in those woods was my echoing fart and my nose burning under the thing's assault. In slow motion, the thing turned its head, looked at me, sniffed the air, and stood up. It had been shuffling around low to the ground the whole time. What I thought were shoulder blades were its elbows. It could tie its shoes without bending, except its paws would have crushed any shoes to bits. They were like trash can lids. It sniffed again and coughed or barked, like it was asking me a question. It sounded like gorp. I swear that's what it sounded like, gorp. So there I was, the idiot who didn't listen to his dad, the awkward dude who farted when trying to sneak away from a freaking gorp. I aimed at it, center mass, and fired. The shot didn't thock into it. It sort of thudded. There was a puff of dirt and hair when it impacted. Bless my luck, the gorp actually flinched. I waited to see blood. I guess gorps are so covered in matted, flea-ridden hair that over time their coat gave them natural body armor, because I didn't see any red at all. What it did do was rear up and make a low growl at me, a warning that had my guts deciding to construct a brick wall. I worked my bolt and fired again. this time at its face. This time, it did thock, along with the dirt a few feet to the thing's left, because it ricocheted off its skull. The thing stood there staring at me, like it was too dumb to realize it could just stand in the creek and grab me by the face while I pelted it with useless bullets. I yelled at it and fired a third shot in any direction, trying to scare it off. The gorp, or gore, or big bear, or whatever, dropped to all fours and lurched toward me. Then I did a 180 and tactically retreated as fast as humanly possible. It worked. I stood there until the sky turned from blue to orange before snapping out of it and heading home. When I got back, I told Dad the story. He could probably smell Big Bear on me, so there was no use lying. When I got to the part about what big bears really are, he refused to believe me. Then he got angry, locked the doors, and camped out upstairs with his shotgun for the rest of my visit. I had to bring him beer from downstairs. When he started talking, the weird thing was how scared he was. As weirded out as I was seeing him, that scared, I wasn't scared myself. I remember that clearly, not being scared at all. I guess you could say I was just too curious to be scared. Because if I'd been scared, I would have just run. And I'd probably be typing this from inside a year-old gorp turd. That's how I met a gorp and lived. It was around October last year. I'd just moved to Washington State. Being new to the area and loving the outdoors, some friends of mine who were huge hiking enthusiasts decided to take me out to a secluded spot. Why not? I needed time away from work anyway. I got the weekend off, packed my bag, cleaned my rifle, and headed to my friend's house. We ended up about 35-40 kilometers from the Canadian border in this forest that seemed endless. I was really into it because my home state didn't have anything like this. There were 7 of us, and 2 dogs, a lab, and a Rottweiler. Each person had either a hunting rifle or shotgun, plus a handgun. Except me, I just had my rifle. We parked on this tiny dirt road used by rangers or border patrol and hiked about 6 kilometers into the woods. By this time, it was getting dark. We decided to build a fire right away so we could set up tents. 2 of the group and 1 dog went out to gather wood while the rest of us started setting up. It was one of those huge 8-person tents. October gets cold up there, but we got the tent up in about 20 minutes. The trio still weren't back. We said screw it and started a fire with branches from around the site. We started hearing crashing sounds headed our way, like someone running full speed. The 2 guys came bursting through wide-eyed. The dog was nowhere to be seen. They started talking rapidly about seeing one of our other friends out in the woods, acting weird. Every time they got close, he'd move away. At one point, he just disappeared, then popped up not 10 feet behind them. They also mentioned a really bad smell, rotten meat and spoiled milk, popping up around them. They tried asking what was up, but there was no answer. Then apparently, he took off sprinting into the woods. The dog chased after him barking, and the 2 guys lost both of them pretty quickly. The smell started disappearing, but far off they heard weird screeching followed by a loud dog yelp. Then the smell came back with a vengeance, this time with what they described as mad giggling. They got out of there. We got really angry at the guy, but everyone who was there vouched for him. Pretty soon we were all weirded out, but still thought it was some messed up prank. I said as much and got yelled at. Well, where's the dog then? Good point. By this point, the sun was down. We built up the fire and brought out Coleman lanterns. All of us huddled around the fire, eating MREs. Our rifles were within reach. About 15 minutes after dark, the remaining dog, the Rottweiler, perked up and started growling, really aggressively growling. The smell came back, and they weren't wrong about it. I'd smelled rotten deer carcasses that smelled fresher. Weird groaning started up, and you could hear branches and leaves cracking around the perimeter. The groaning intensified, and the dog was going ballistic. One of the guys with a shotgun, Greg, stood up and fired 3 rounds of buckshot randomly into the woods. This hellacious screech came out and started moving away fast. The smell dissipated. We waited about an hour, then decided to try sleeping. 2 people on guard at all times. First watch was me and another guy, Victor. The dog chilled by the fire. 2 hours in, nothing happened, so we woke Greg and Tom for their turn. After being asleep a while, I woke up to that smell and Greg yelling. We got up and went outside. Greg was looking around with a spotlight, calling Tom's name. I asked what happened. They'd been sitting there when they heard one of the guys from earlier calling out from the woods. The dog started growling and rushed the spot. Tom followed. The dog went through some bushes and Tom lost him, so Tom followed into the woods. Greg had been yelling for him when he heard Tom start to say something before getting cut off. "I can't leave them out there," someone said. We all got dressed, grabbed flashlights or spotlights, took our weapons, and headed out. The smell was everywhere now, making most of us nauseous. But we kept going because we wanted to find Tom. We found some of his tracks, but lost the trail when they just stopped. Literally no other footprints after that point, and none leading back. One of the guys at the back was shining his light around and stopped, making this weird noise. Then he started yelling, "You jerk, I've been worried sick." The rest of us walked over. There was Tom, standing about 20 feet away, but standing very wrong. "Are you okay, buddy? Need help?" He just stood there, blank-faced, then slowly nodded. A few of us walked over and supported him by the shoulders. We noticed he reeked. The dude hadn't even been out a full day. Laughter all around, except from him. We thought maybe he fell and hit his head. Back at camp, we tried to lay him down, but he refused. We let him stay outside by the fire. A couple of us went to sleep, but Greg, Vic, and I stayed up to watch him. Watching him, he did weird, jerky muscle spasm things every now and then. Creepy stuff. We thought it might be serious. He was mostly quiet and slow to respond, until food. We gave him an MRE, and he only ate the meat. We shrugged it off. Then he got up and started moving around very jerkily, looking toward the woods. He asked if we wanted to come into the woods with him for firewood. Besides the fact it was pitch black except for our fire, and we had a huge stack of firewood already collected, it wasn't that weird. He jerked something like a shrug before walking strangely into the woods. At this point, we were on guard and didn't try to stop him. Greg got up a few minutes later to step into the tent. I was outside with Vic when the smell hit my nose like a ton of bricks. I gagged. I started hearing gibbering and giggling. I'd never been more freaked out, and Vic felt the same. Greg came out in time to hear it, then started cursing, which woke everyone up. I didn't know why he was cursing, but it was working. When they were all awake, he counted everyone. You could see him turn white. "What's up?" Apparently, while he was inside, he did a quick body count. There were 5 bodies inside. Someone or something had been in our tent without us realizing. We lost it at that moment. everyone started asking where Tom was. The gibbering got louder. You could hear nonsense moving through the woods. We heard Tom's voice calling from the woods, asking us to help him, but it was all off-key, and every now and then he'd start giggling. We built the fire up, sat around it with all lanterns on full, weapons ready, until morning. As soon as we could see, we put out the fire, packed our stuff, and headed for the vehicles. We started hearing the giggling again, and the smell returned. We just got out of there. Back at the cars, there were scratches all over them. Most windows were smashed. Seats were ripped to shreds. We just needed them to run. We tossed keys in ignitions, heard those beautiful engines start, threw our stuff in, got in, and sped out. We didn't talk about it for months. Most of us didn't even admit it happened. One of the guys told us later he'd seen Tom at the edge of the woods, staring at us as we left. Apparently, he had this very creepy grin on his face. I believe him. I know I'll never go camping that far out again without a lot more people. But I believe that was my first encounter with a skinwalker. In the summer of 2015, I decided to hunt coyotes for that sweet fur money. I grabbed my basic AR-15 that I got cheap. I like how an AK slings, so I rigged a sling point on the barrel, slung it messenger bag style, and took my ATV up to a cabin in the mountains. Upon arriving, I took the ATV key and started looking around. I'd been throwing rabbit and squirrel guts into the woods to attract predators. Checking my bait, I found it all gone. A strange feeling persisted. The guy who lives just down the mountain left in his car just as I decided to look around in the woods. Every time I stepped, I kept thinking I heard another footstep shuffling through the grass and brush. I saw a stick-figured shaped thing at a distance down the hill. I sort of waved at it, and it slipped behind a tree. I thought, okay, goodbye, and walked back to the cabin, deciding to just drink for a while. I started hearing coyote yelps in the distance, so I got ready. I sat with lights off on the porch, but nothing came by. Then, the yelping turned into a distant, "Help me!" I looked at the neighbor's house. Lights were off. It didn't click that he'd left. I got up and listened. "Help me! Help me!" I thought maybe he broke his leg and was stuck in the woods with coyotes or something. I got close enough to tell it was on an ATV trail and decided to take my ATV driving toward the person. When I came to a U-shaped dip in the path without hitting brakes, I coasted down. I heard something right in front of me on the trail scream, "Help me!" And I freaked, trying to turn. I ended up flipping my ATV. I blacked out for a minute and woke up under it, pinned. I sat still, waiting for my eyes to adjust, feeling around. My left leg was pinned. I tried pushing but couldn't get it off. It felt like it got 100 pounds heavier. The sling around my neck told me I still had my rifle. I dragged it to me, realizing my arm was bleeding. I checked the gun. Handguard was messed up. Stock was cracked, but appeared functional. I've got 30 rounds to keep me safe until morning or someone finds me. I sat listening closely before I heard something shuffling in the grass. That silence is everything. Dead quiet. I don't think I've ever felt more fear. I heard it shuffling closer. "Help me! Help me!" I didn't know if I should respond or stay silent. The shuffling got closer. Something appeared over the ATV, like if you'd fallen at a bar, and the bartender looked at you funny. This thing looked 9 feet tall. Frozen solid, I twiddled my fingers reaching for my gun, brought it to my shoulder, and sat there pointed at whatever this was. I didn't want to look at it, because I felt so much fear. "Help me," I heard again. I heard it climbing over the ATV. I looked away, but something grabbed my face. My mind went blank, looking for the trigger, but couldn't find it. Slowly, it moved my head over. I was face to face with this thing. It looked like everyone describes them, like Gollum on crack, carved up its face, sunken cheeks, deep eyes. To this day, I've never smelled anything as bad as the breath from that thing. I felt the flash hider on my AR bump into something. I remembered I had it aimed at the thing. My brain rebooted and I screamed as loud as I could. It screamed back. I started yanking the trigger as fast as I could. The gun was going off. My ears started ringing. It grabbed my hair and started slamming my head into the ground as fast as it could, still pulling the trigger. It ripped the gun from my hand and started beating me with it, still screaming while beating me over the head with my own gun. Lights started flickering through the woods. I was about to black out when I heard something louder than the screaming. I swear I saw the thing's head fly open. It dropped my gun, screamed like a child shoved in an oven, and ran. My gun was dropped 10 feet from my head. Light was getting closer. Someone started screaming my name, telling me to hold on. Something was tugging my arm. I looked over. It was the guy from down the road. He had a huge revolver, a Magnum Research BFR. At that moment, I just blacked out. Woke up in a hospital with stitches all over my head. When I got out, I asked my neighbor what he saw that night. He just replied, "A bear. We get them often up here." I'm not convinced I was nearly beaten to death with my own gun by a bear. Hey Joel, I've been a big fan for a while. Thankfully, I've never had anything happen that might necessitate writing a scary story. But then recently, I asked my mom about an unusual memory from my childhood, which turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. This happened when I was 9 years old, Thanksgiving 1995. My family drove across the state to spend the night with my aunt and uncle on mom's side. I was close with my cousins, and mom and her sister were really close, so we spent a lot of holidays together. We drove to their place. I remember playing with my cousins for hours. Then we all sat down to dinner after being summoned by mom and aunt. We all sat, loaded our plates, and the last thing I remember is mom and aunt telling us we were going to have dinner upstairs in the bedrooms. I have this distinct memory of not wanting to eat upstairs. But then mom said anyone who eats their turkey upstairs gets to watch Space Jam on the big TV in the master bedroom. That was all that needed to be said, and we were all up there before you could say, "I believe I can fly." Mom laid out a blanket, put all our plates down, and we just sat there perfectly content. Mom stayed with us, but didn't eat anything. Whenever we needed the bathroom, she'd walk us there and back. Anytime we wanted to go downstairs for any reason, she'd tell us to wait and then return with whatever we wanted. The way I remembered it, it was the best Thanksgiving ever. We got to eat dessert up there too, watched a bunch of other movies, then all fell asleep in my aunt and uncle's bed before driving home the next morning. That's where my memory ends. For the longest time, I remembered nothing except how cool it was to watch Space Jam while eating turkey. I somehow knew it was an exception. We asked if we could do it in following years, and were always told no. But last year, I happened to ask my dad about that Thanksgiving and why just for 1 year we got to eat in front of the TV. I remember he gave me this look, one I didn't recognize. I feel like we're all used to seeing our dads with 3 basic facial expressions. The "I'm not mad right now, but I'm ready" look, straight up mad, and my sports team just one smile. But that day, Dad gave me this look I could only interpret as fear. Whatever the answer was, it wasn't some half-buried memory made fuzzy by beer. It was something he remembered very well, and it frightened him. He let out a big sigh and said, "Don't tell your mom I told you this," then went into the grown-ups version of events. "Everything I told you still stands. Everything was fine until we sat down to dinner. As we were eating, the phone rang. My uncle got up to answer, and it was a man asking for my aunt. He calls her to the phone, then sits back down. A minute or two later, Aunt comes back, but she's quiet and not touching her food. Uncle asks what's wrong, but she says it's fine, just someone from work. He dropped it. Another minute goes by, and the grown-ups see a car's headlights turn into my aunt and uncle's driveway. They weren't expecting anyone, but it was Thanksgiving. Someone stopping by unexpectedly wasn't unusual, but instead of acting curious like the rest of them, Dad said he watched the color drain from Aunt's face. Uncle was halfway to getting up, and Aunt grabbed him by the arm and said 3 hushed words that had the color draining from his face too. "Get your gun." Obviously, Mom and Dad wanted to know what was happening, but there was no time to explain. All Aunt told them was that we might all be in danger. At which point, Mom started gathering us kids and taking us upstairs. We'd all been sitting at the kids' table right next to the adults' table. I don't remember anything except the moment Mom told me to go upstairs. As I told you, she stayed upstairs with us, making sure we didn't see or hear what happened next. Headed up by Uncle, Dad and Aunt went to see who'd showed up unexpectedly. Following Aunt's advice, Uncle had his .45 ready. He said he had no idea who was out there or why Aunt was so scared. All the unanswered questions had him just as scared as she was. But still, he did what he had to. According to Dad, they walked outside and couldn't see anything right away because the guy's headlights were blinding them. But they took a few steps off the porch, and their security light lit up the stranger's car. Dad said he could see the guy standing behind his open trunk, but couldn't see his face at first. Uncle was marching toward the guy, demanding he identify himself. The guy stepped out from behind his car, holding a gun. Aunt screamed, then ran back inside. But Dad was frozen, knowing that if this random gun-toting stranger shot Uncle, he'd have to try rushing him from the side, because there was no way he was letting some maniac get into the house where his kids were upstairs. Dad also said that around the same time he saw the gun, he noticed something. The guy was drunk, extremely drunk. He didn't so much step out as stumble out, and as Uncle approached, the guy looked like he had no idea how to use the gun he was holding. Uncle raised his own gun. "You point that thing at me, and I'll kill you." By some miracle, the stranger either couldn't load it properly or couldn't get a good grip on the slide, because Uncle made it all the way over and knocked him out cold before he could even look up. Dad said it was a nasty hit, but he'd never been so relieved in his life. After that, Dad rushed over, disarmed the stranger for good. Then he and Uncle basically sat on the guy until cops showed up. The guy did wake up from being knocked out and had almost no idea where he was so out of it, he didn't even try to get up until he saw police lights approaching. Deputies cuffed him and took him away. All the while, my cousins and I were up in the bedroom, completely unaware. Like I said, Mom stayed with us until bedtime. I remember Aunt and Uncle coming in to say goodnight. They were as cool and calm as anything, not even a hint of what had just happened. But after we went to sleep, it was different. Aunt told Mom, Dad, and Uncle for the very first time the story of why she'd packed up and moved away from her home city. It was all because of some psycho she'd made the mistake of marrying. He didn't hit her. He wasn't a violent man, which made sense after the sorry display he made with a pistol. But he found other ways to make her life miserable. At first, she didn't need to work because he could take care of her. She didn't need her own checking account because why would she? Aunt was too naive to realize that when her ex-husband turned bad, not having her own money meant she was basically stranded. Her ex took the phone out of the house, threw all the food out bit by bit, and left her alone overnight. She had to beg on the street for payphone money to call my grandma to rescue her. She was so ashamed of having gotten into that situation, of having been so stupid, as she put it, that she swore Grandma to secrecy. It was a secret Grandma took to her grave. Sometime after Aunt moved to be closer to family, she met Uncle, and the rest is history. She thought she'd left that whole sad chapter behind. After 12 years of not hearing from him, she had no idea if her ex was dead or alive. Not until he showed up at her house that Thanksgiving evening with a gun and 2 gallons of gas in his trunk to burn the house down after he'd shot us all. At least that was his plan. The guy ended up in prison, not for as long as anyone would have liked, but if he steps foot back in that town, he goes straight back to prison. No questions asked. Obviously, 30 years have gone by. My parents and aunt are all in their 70s now, which means her ex is around that age too. Hopefully, he's found peace and isn't going to reach out again. But that's the thing that actually frightens me about this story. It's not over yet. Everyone just assumes he's not going to show up again, mostly because of how old he'll be. But from where I'm standing, it looks more like hope than assumption. They're all just hoping this guy isn't going to show up. The idea that there's some impending tragedy on the horizon makes me feel like there's a blade hanging over my neck, just waiting to drop. I'm scared that what my aunt went through twice will only really be over when her ex is dead. At least I hope so, because God knows I don't want it to end with anyone else dying except him. Something like 8 years ago, I got my first dog, a toy-sized poodle puppy. She was adorable and way too smart for her own good. She quickly learned that little kids, elderly ladies, and people wearing pink sparkly stuff loved puppies so much that she could get people food from them. One day she escaped the yard while I was vacuuming. I ended up searching everywhere, first on foot, then decided she must have gone far, maybe got out right when I started. So I got in my car and started driving around, calling for her and showing people pictures, asking if they'd seen my puppy. As I'm driving around, hollering for her, I see some kids on their lawn playing with dolls. They look 6 to 7 years old maybe. They hear me calling and come running up to ask what kind of puppy I lost. I was going to show them my phone picture, then realized this is exactly the scenario they use to teach stranger danger. So instead, I said, "Go get your parents. I need to talk to them." One girl did, but the other stood there, even put her hands on my car's windowsill, asking if I had the puppy in the car. At the time, my only thought was for the parents to hurry up because I really didn't know what to do. The mom comes out and has a total panic, seeing her child right up at a stranger's car. She comes running over. I explained I lost my dog, gave her my number, showed her the picture. But I doubt she believed any of it, because she just scooped up her kids and carried them into the house. I just wanted to share the story, because that day I was the creep. And if you're wondering if I found my puppy, I did. A neighbor found her. She'd gone into his chicken coop and fallen asleep in a nest full of eggs, got sat on by the mama bird. When he went to collect eggs, he was surprised to find a very waggy tail chick. I don't have an explanation for what happened. I have ideas, but here's the story. I'm a recent high school graduate heading to college. During my senior year, I had a job working for my grandfather as a farmhand, basically a farm manager. He'd give me instructions on what to do without him being there. Most commonly, feeding the cattle. It was early October, and baseball practice had started after school, lasted from 3:30 to 5:30. By then the sun was almost down when I arrived at work. One day, I'd gotten dressed, filled buckets, fed the first farm, when I realized I didn't have the key to the other farm. Frustrated, I was forced to carry 2 buckets at a time, walk them from the fence to the feed trough, a good 40-yard walk. While walking, trying to keep up beat, I just started whistling. No real pattern or tune, just something I made up. When I came back and put the last buckets in the truck bed, I heard something from the neighboring property. Whistling. Strange, I thought. No one lives near that property, and it sounded very close. I rationalized it was a mockingbird or something, and went on with my life. The next couple days, I didn't whistle, but the whistling continued. Slowly over those few days, it got clearer and clearer until it sounded like regular whistling. Eventually, it got louder. When I first heard it, it was very faint. I almost missed it over the crunching of my footsteps. In the last few days, I'd become accustomed to the whistling and kind of expected it. Then one day, it didn't come. I was a little disappointed. This time I had the key and walked up to the gate, started fiddling with my keys. I dropped them in the grass. "Damn it," I said when I dropped them. I squatted down searching for them when I heard a very faint sound coming from the other property. A low groan or gurgle, getting louder. At this point, I wasn't scared, more curious. I left my truck parked and walked a few feet down the road, hopped the fence to the property where I'd heard the sounds. The land there goes straight uphill and is heavily wooded. The farther up you go, the denser it gets. Looking back, I made a few big mistakes that could have gotten me hurt. As I walked up the hill, I'd occasionally hear the gurgle, far up the hill, still faint as before. As I walked, a bad smell hit my nose, a weird mixture of garbage and wet dog or something. I heard something as I was about to crest the hill. Damn it. A very dry, low, distorted damn it came from a couple yards in front of me. It sounded like a 60-year-old smoker saying it very slowly, as if they didn't know English. I automatically thought someone was on our property. Somewhat angry and paranoid, I started moving slower. I didn't want this guy to hear me before I could see him. I kept going, stopped, and listened. I heard another sound. Damn it, damn it, damn it. This guy was now slowly saying, damn it, normally, not long and drawn out in that eerie way, as if he didn't know English. I sat on a log, listening, trying to figure out what to do about this person. He kept saying it over and over. I noticed his tone was getting higher, His inflection was changing, and it hit me. This guy was perfectly mimicking me. My tone, inflection, literally everything. He even mimicked my frustration when I'd said it, angry and annoyed. Angry and kind of scared now, I got up and started to crest the hill. I flicked on my phone's flashlight. "Hey, this is private property." I was cut off as I came over the hill. The light barely illuminated this naked figure, squatting just a couple yards in front of me. His eyes were illuminated by the faint glow of my flashlight. I automatically felt something was wrong. This wasn't a regular person. His neck was longer than normal. When I came up the hill, he wrenched his neck and snapped his head to look at me without moving. His eyes were too big. His head was large and slender. He was squatted in a ballerina-type squat. I looked at his body, very skinny, ribs showing through skin. There was a short silence. Like a robot, the man turned in the leaves and slowly stood with his hands at his sides. I was debating if it was even a person. It was far too tall to be a person. "Damn it," it said in my voice. I turned and sprinted down the hill. It didn't feel like running, more like my legs were just going through the motions. I didn't look back until I got to the fence, hopped it, got in my truck, and sped away. Sadly, I still work at that farm, but I've never told anyone this story, not even my grandfather. I've only heard the whistling a few more times since then. I'm not really a believer in the paranormal. I'm trying to find an explanation for weird stuff, and I believe this may have been some strange squatter. But I really don't know. Thanksgiving is coming up, and I know you sometimes make videos based on whatever holidays on the horizon, so I wanted to send in my story about that time of year. I had a great childhood. I know that in the age of people wearing their traumas on their sleeve, that's not a very cool thing to admit, but it's true. I don't have issues with my mom or dad, who are still together after 40+ years of marriage. I wasn't bullied at school. Unlike my two best friends growing up who had health problems, I never had any chronic medical issues. I used to think I was lucky. Everyone seemed to have some messed up thing going on. Divorces, siblings, or parents with drug problems. Anything that made them broody and world-weary by high school. But I didn't. But during Thanksgiving 2007, when I was 16, I found out everything in my family wasn't exactly perfect either. I have an uncle who's almost 18 years younger than my dad. Dad was an only child through his teenage years. Then one day got news his little brother was on the way. My grandparents always said my uncle was an unexpected blessing, which I guess means he was an accident. Being the baby of the family, he was doted on and spoiled like nobody's business. This ended up with Dad and Uncle being worlds apart in age, but also worlds apart in personality. Dad spent a few years in the Marines. Wasn't like Rambo or anything, but it stuck with him. Whereas Uncle was a struggling musician, then a struggling artist, then a struggling writer. All because my grandparents blew so much hot air up his butt that he thought ambition could trump talent. I always thought he was cool and could never understand why Dad gave him such a hard time. He always seemed so laid back and chill. I could talk to him about stuff Dad found boring or had no time for. I was always pleased to see him whenever he visited, and he and Dad never argued in front of me, which I appreciate looking back on. At least until the Thanksgiving I'm about to tell you about. One night we're having dinner, and Dad tells Mom that Uncle was bringing his girlfriend over for Thanksgiving. I remember being excited to meet her. Anyone dating my uncle must be as cool as him, right? Mom and Dad seemed kind of nervous, emphasis on kind of, but I put it down to never having met her prior to some big family occasion. Cut to maybe a week later, and Uncle shows up for Thanksgiving and starts introducing his girlfriend to the whole family. She was very attractive, I'll say that much, but definitely out of place with her leather jacket and tattoos. That being said, my family was as friendly as ever and tried to make her feel welcome. Dad made a toast, we ate dinner, then everyone kind of went their separate ways. The men went to watch sports highlights, the women had coffee in the kitchen, and younger kids played among themselves. But me? I went upstairs to my bedroom to play video games. I can't remember how long I played, but it was mid-evening when I went downstairs to grab a soda, maybe 7:30 or 18. I walked into the kitchen. Right by the refrigerator was the door to the garage. I opened the fridge, grabbed a soda, then after closing it and starting to walk out, I heard something coming from the garage. To my knowledge, everyone was either around the TV or playing cards in the dining room. There was no one in the kitchen, and definitely shouldn't have been anyone in the garage. So obviously the question was, who was in there and why? It could have been a raccoon, I guess. But my biggest fear, the one that had me reaching for the door to peek outside, was the idea that someone had broken into our garage. The same garage that had direct access to a house full of totally unsuspecting people, and myself. I remember reaching for the handle real slow, then pulling it open real fast, then just scanning the interior. Something caught my eye right away. It was Uncle's girlfriend. Her eyes looked wrong, blood coming from her nose and mouth. At first, I thought Uncle was trying to help her, but then, right there with me watching, he hits her. He hit her so hard, her head just jerked back in this weird ragdoll way I can still remember clear as day, even all these years later. The second he did, I slammed the door shut and ran into the TV room, managed to get everyone's attention by just pointing toward the kitchen and saying, "Uncle Tony, in the garage." That's not his real name, by the way. Everyone ran to the garage. Cops were called. Within maybe 10 to 15 minutes, what had been this nice family atmosphere had turned into total chaos, which spilled out into the streets and ended with Uncle in a cop car and his girlfriend in an ambulance. I didn't get to see much before Mom and Dad screamed at me to get up to my room. They were so angry I thought they were mad at me for a while. Afterwards, they explained something to me that I don't think childless people are even capable of conceiving. So much of what a parent does bears no other purpose than to protect their children. Sometimes a parent can come across as a total jerk, a soulless, joyless husk that wants nothing but to suck happiness out of their kid's life. I know there are times when parents overstep and genuinely are cruel and abusive. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things that feel like punishments or restrictions that are actually nothing but manifestations of love and protection. That's pretty much why Mom and Dad shielded me from the truth about Uncle Tony. They didn't want to cut him off or have me resent them for not allowing us a relationship. So they went about this difficult balancing act of allowing him to visit without filling my head with stuff he was doing in his life. Stuff like doing drugs, committing petty crimes, stealing from grandparents, and as I saw with my own eyes, being a complete piece of garbage in how he treated the women in his life. Uncle Tony got picked up by cops after Dad, and some neighbors basically beat the crap out of him and pinned him down in our driveway, but his girlfriend had to stay in the hospital overnight. Uncle had beaten her pretty badly. I think doctors were scared she had a concussion, but all she had was a broken nose and busted lip. I guess Mom and Dad paid her hospital bills, and Mom went to visit her sometime after. I'm guessing to talk about pressing charges. To this day, I don't know for sure if Mom went to talk her into it. She's always claimed all she said was, "We'll support you no matter what your decision is," and that the girl pressed charges all on her own. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I've heard way too many stories about battered wives and girlfriends being too afraid to talk to cops for years before suddenly snapping and deciding to do something. Maybe that was the case with Uncle and his girlfriend. Or maybe Mom knew that unless someone stepped in and encouraged her to do the right thing, the same pattern of misery and violence would just go on until someone died or got sent to jail. Just to be clear, that's entirely speculation on my part. I guess I'll take Mom's word for it that she didn't intervene. But either way, it went to court, and Uncle pled no contest, seeing as there were a ton of witnesses against him, and ended up doing 4 years of a 7-year sentence. At which point, my parents totally cut him off, and by that time I was completely okay with them doing that. I had absolutely no desire to see Uncle Tony ever again. Now I know it might sound messed up, but for the first few days after it happened, I wasn't angry or horrified or appalled. I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe someone I looked up to so much was capable of something so awful. I couldn't make sense of it. There had to have been some terrible misunderstanding. And I still haven't forgiven myself for thinking this, but I couldn't help but wonder, had she done something to deserve it? Was she trying to steal something? Had he caught her doing drugs? There had to be some logical reason why my laid-back, incredibly cool uncle would do something so terrible. Spoilers, there wasn't a reason. At least nothing that could possibly justify putting his hands on her the way he did. I had to hear the whole thing from Mom following her visit to the still recovering and now ex-girlfriend to really understand what happened. One of the things I wondered in the days after was why his girlfriend hadn't screamed. If they were having a fight or whatever, how had it gone from near silence to physical violence without any escalation in volume? That was just one of the reasons I very naively thought there must have been something more to the story, right up until Mom told me the following. She hadn't asked Uncle's ex the same question, not directly anyway. It just came out during Mom's retelling of her visit. Uncle's ex didn't scream when he started hitting her because she'd learned that if she did, he'd only hit her harder. This did 2 things. Number 1, it gave me an idea of just how long the abuse had been going on. And 2, it made me hate my uncle, and I mean really hate him. There was and is something so sickeningly sadistic about that one little detail. Once I had it in my head, there was no coming back from it. That was the uncle I didn't know I had. That was the version my parents tried to shield me from. I guess that's maybe an overdone concept with some stories. The old. I thought they were sweet, but they were actually a monster. But I also understand why they don't ever really get old. That's something a lot of people go through, realizing that sometimes things aren't quite what they seem. But a lot of my school friends got that lesson way early, whereas I was well into my teenage years when I realized that sometimes you think you know someone when really you don't know them at all. Firstly, I don't know your policy on this kind of thing, so feel free to leave it out if you don't think it's necessary. But I'd like to give everyone a trigger warning regarding the topic of suicide. I personally don't think I need them, but I've talked to enough people with these kinds of ideations over the years to know they're greatly appreciated by those who do. So if you don't mind including this one, I think people would be grateful. I gave it away already, but I struggled with these kinds of thoughts for a long time. I ended up getting addicted to painkillers after a sports injury. Although I tried as hard as I possibly could to break the cycle and kick my habit, I kept failing time and time again. Addiction counseling just didn't work for me, and once I'd picked up street drugs a few times and knew my way around, keeping me away from opiates became harder and harder. In the end, I decided the only way out, the only true way out, was to take my own life and stop being such a burden on everyone around me. I only made one solid attempt, and I survived. After ending up in the hospital, my parents were informed of what I'd tried to do. It was a sort of come to Jesus moment when I realized how far I'd fallen. From then on, we did things differently. There were no more rehabs, no more treatment programs in the city. I was going out to the middle of nowhere, to where Mom and Dad owned a little vacation cabin, and I was basically going to live there until opiates just weren't part of my thought process anymore. It was like a bridge between where I was and wherever I was going to go next. Although I didn't know exactly where that would be, I sure as hell knew it wasn't going to involve any pills or powders I couldn't buy at a regular drugstore. I ended up staying at that cabin for 5 months, and it was in a real sorry state when I found it. I guess that just showed my resolve though. Cleaning it gave me something to keep occupied, and I guess the whole process was maybe good for the mind or something, because it definitely had this therapy-like quality that had an awesome effect on my peace of mind. So like I say, I made the house a home, so to speak, then stayed there basically the whole fall, including Thanksgiving. I'd been there a while by that point, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss my family. In fact, I was just jonesing for some company all around. So when Mom and Dad suggested driving up to visit with some turkey, stuffing, and cranberry sandwiches, I was in no position to turn them down. They traveled up. We had a nice afternoon hanging out. Then we all went to bed at a pretty early hour before rising just as early. I made us some eggs. They packed up their things. But before they left, my parents asked if I wanted to go for a walk. It had been a while since they'd visited the cabin, so they figured it'd be nice to reacquaint themselves with some of the old trails we used to walk during childhood vacations. I remembered the old route because it led up to this big iron bridge that ran high above a shallow stream. Walking across it always used to freak me out as a kid, because looking through the railings down into the stream gave me the willies. But the more we went there, the less freaked out I got. And eventually, it became one of my favorite spots. So we started on our walk along those winding trails that went up and up until we reached the iron footbridge. When we got there, we saw this other guy standing by the railings, looking over the edge. There are plenty of other cabins in the area, so I figured this guy was doing the same thing we were, taking a walk, maybe before or after dinner, just to clear his head and digest his turkey. We didn't call out to him or anything. I figured we'd just give him a friendly nod if we made eye contact while walking across the bridge. We also weren't talking very loudly, just enjoying the stillness of the forest. So I guess we were talking in library voices or something. Go figure. Anyway, My point is, this guy didn't see or hear us until we were almost right up on the bridge. And when he did, I knew something was off just from the look he gave us. He got startled and had this sort of, "uh-oh, you caught me" expression that I found really confusing at first. But then he did what he did, and that look made a chilling amount of sense. The second after the guy saw us, he threw himself off the bridge. Mom let out this really shocked gasp while Dad went to grab her, like he was trying to protect her from something that couldn't actually do her any physical harm. Me, on the other hand, I just ran forward toward where the guy had jumped. Looking back, I don't really know what I was thinking. To be honest, I don't really know if I was thinking at all. I guess it was just some gut reaction to try and stop the guy from falling, but he was in free fall by the time I even stepped foot onto the bridge. He didn't do it like 1 foot up the railing, then jump. He sort of rolled himself over, I guess to try his best to land on his head or neck. But things didn't work out like that for him. He didn't get to go quick. After I saw what remained of him, I've never been able to get that image out of my head. I don't want to go into too much detail and turn this into some big gross affair, but just imagine what it would be like to somehow survive a fall that breaks dozens of bones but still has you awake and feeling everything. The image was bad, but I honestly think the noises he was making were worse. He couldn't really scream. He was trying to. He was trying with all he could to express just how much agony he felt. But for some reason, probably in part due to the devastation his body had just endured, he couldn't actually scream. The only sound he could make was this croaking noise, like a big bullfrog. He only made it once or twice before I ran back toward my parents to turn us back toward the cabin. Thankfully, cell reception in the area wasn't too bad, which meant my first 911 call connected just fine. I told the dispatcher what happened. A forest ranger was first on scene, but by the time they got there, the guy lying in the shallow stream had stopped making all those terrible noises. I honestly think even if the ranger had been there with his medical supplies the moment the guy jumped, there still wouldn't have been a thing we could do for him. He was a mess beyond saving, and I have no doubt he died in absolute agony. I moved out of the cabin a month later. Although it wasn't the whole reason, witnessing that man take his life up near the bridge was definitely playing a part. It's not like I was having nightmares or anything, and I really don't want to sound too self-absorbed here, because what happened to that guy is a tragedy all on its own. But I couldn't help but think to myself, that could have been you down there, writhing in agony, trying and failing to scream your last scream. I think that was the time I knew I was going to be okay, because the one thing I was certain of is that I never want to end up like that guy. I know how it feels to be that desperate, but what I realized was I never once considered that taking my own life would be a selfish thing to do. I thought the selfish thing was to try and carry on living, that it was cowardly to just go on living, knowing I was going to be an addict my whole life. But the truth is, choosing life is the bravest thing a person can do. Waking up, getting dressed, going to face whatever life throws at you, that's the really difficult part. And there's personal glory in even the smallest of successes. That, and I wouldn't wish seeing a body like that on anyone, not even a dumb junkie like me, because now I believe people can be haunted by the dead, not by some apparition, but by the ghost inside their head. For Thanksgiving 2011, I took my family over to my sister's place. They lived in Chattanooga, which was a long drive from where we lived in Indianapolis. But I had no problem driving all that way to spend holidays with my brother-in-law. He'd become my best friend during those early dad years. I didn't really have anyone else to ask advice from. My own father passed when I was a kid, and my friends who actually got it together and had families didn't do so until their 30s. So when it came to getting dad advice, he was the first person I turned to. That conversation evolved into one of the closest friendships of my life. So we got there. He cooked us an amazing dinner. Afterwards, he complained he wasn't feeling so hot. He went to the bathroom, came back saying there was fluid coming from his ear, but was quick to reassure us he'd struggled with ear infections in the past and it wasn't anything to worry about. The night went on perfectly normal. We put the kids to bed around 9 my. Adult bedtime ended up being around 11:30 to midnight. But then around 1 a.m., my sister wakes up to her husband trembling and sweating in bed next to her, saying he felt like he had a fever. He goes to the bathroom, takes some medication, but he's still awake and shivering at 3 a.m. with no signs of feeling better. The next morning, my sister got up early to take care of their boys, mindful to be quiet so he could rest. I swung by in the morning with breakfast for them. My sister informed me he was still sleeping. Right away, I thought that was weird because he was never one to let a hangover keep him in bed. I knew he must have been feeling terrible. The two of us tried to keep noise from the boys to a minimum and let my brother-in-law rest. We all had plans that afternoon. Afternoon rolls around. After calling a couple times and them not picking up, my wife and I went by the house around 2 cars to check on them. The moment we got there, I got this terrible feeling when I stepped inside. I took no satisfaction in finding out how right I was. The moment my sister opened the door, she was white as a ghost. She told me to follow her upstairs because she desperately needed help. We sprint upstairs to find my brother-in-law breathing extremely erratically, bright green mucus coming from his nose. My sister was shaking him to wake him, and we could hear fluid in his lungs as he breathed. As I started trying to wake him, my sister ran to get water to pour on his face to rinse off the mucus and try to startle him awake. At that point, he stopped breathing. I looked up at my sister. We both knew things were getting wildly serious, and we had to act fast. She was fortunate to have had a few CPR lessons, so she started instructing me on exactly what needed to be done. We screamed to my wife to call 911 and have my mom get the kids out of the house. My wife ran upstairs on the phone to see the two of us performing CPR on him. This is when things went from bad to worse. We dragged him off the bed to the floor and started alternating breathing in his mouth and chest compressions. As I did the CPR moves, a truly horrifying amount of blood started coming out of his mouth and nose. This was something I was completely unprepared for. I didn't even realize it was blood at first. It was dark brown, not like movies depict. So there I was, bawling with my sister as the two of us pounded on my brother-in-law's chest. My wife standing over us on the phone with the operator. I decided I'm going to check on him. With my thumb, I opened his eyelid. Big mistake. You cannot unsee that. His eye didn't focus, didn't move, didn't do anything. I pulled my hand away. I was still performing CPR. My sister runs around the bed to get shorts for my brother-in-law before paramedics arrive, So when they take him out, he's not completely nude. Now another thing I wasn't ready for, my brother-in-law's bowels evacuating as we tried to get his underwear on. Seconds later, my sister is standing there cupping her hands over his groin, crying, saying, "He's peeing! Oh my God, he's peeing!" I yell back that we're doing everything we can and it's going to be okay. But we both knew things were not going to be okay. It was only a question of how bad they were about to get. The paramedics arrived. The moment they did, we got out of the way to let them work. At this point, I was so relieved. They just needed to get him breathing and start his heart. This is the 21st century, right? They do this daily, right? I thought wrong. They started chest compressions, got him on monitors, and this belt-looking thing that went around his chest and performed compressions automatically. It was terrible to watch as it contracts and sends him heaving forward, then back down, over and over. We draped a sheet around his waist before they dragged him downstairs. I ran to the bathroom because I was now very aware of the taste in my mouth, like I had a mouthful of pennies. I vomited. I rinsed my mouth as they got him downstairs. I found myself screaming, "Get the kids outside now!" My wife takes them and gets them to the back patio. Thankfully, they didn't see him the way he was. We ran out the door and got to the hospital. The ambulance wasn't there yet, so I waited outside as it arrived. They wheeled him to the door. Chest still regularly heaving upwards, eyes still closed. I ran back to the waiting room and told my sister and wife he'd arrived. After that, all we could do was wait. It feels like hours go by. They pull us into a small room, and the doctor comes to speak to us. The moment he asked if he could close the door, I just kind of knew. He informs us they tried everything, but my brother-in-law had passed away. I'm not totally sure what happened next. No tears at first, disbelief and confusion. My sister is hysterically crying, screaming, "It's not supposed to be this way. They were supposed to grow old together." I eventually lose it. Everyone was inconsolable. Things have since gotten better, or at least more normal. But still, I can barely believe it. The company I work for was awesome about it. They paid for grief counseling for my sister and me. Between friends and family, my sister received close to $25,000 that she's putting toward the boys' college funds. You really find out who's important in your life really quickly. I have amazing friends and family and wouldn't trade a single one for the world. We later found out he had a nearly perfect storm of issues. Infection that manifested as strep pneumonia, meningitis, lung infection, ear infection, enlarged heart, and eventually septic shock. Within 13 hours of shivering in bed, he was dead. If I can give any advice to anyone that reads or hears this, go to the doctor if you feel even remotely sick. Don't think about how you're going to pay for it. Just tough it out, because just 1 second with those you love is more valuable than any dollar amount. Any. My brother-in-law was a healthy guy too. He worked out regularly, did Brazilian jiu-jitsu, biked everywhere, cooked all meals from organic produce, did yoga, and was only 41 years old when he passed. He was a magnificent human being, an amazing martial artist, and a wonderful father. He will be missed. When I was just 12 years old, my dad and I went for a walk just before Thanksgiving dinner. We lived just south of Columbus, in a little suburb called German Village. It was a great place to grow up. We had a big house with my own bedroom and a big backyard. At the end of this backyard was a small gate, and beyond that were woods, and then a deep, fast-flowing river that's probably still popular with summertime kayakers. I remember being incredibly hungry, but dinner wasn't going to be ready for another hour or so. Instead of sitting in front of the TV moping, Dad offered to take me on a walk to the river. Walking down there to throw twigs and stones into the water was one of my favorite things, mainly because I was never allowed to do it alone. I have a vivid memory of throwing larger stones into the water and finding the big plop they made upon splashing to be extremely satisfying. Plus, as Dad said, if we used up the last of the daylight to walk down there, toss a few stones in, then walk back, then dinner would be on the table just seconds after we arrived. Seemed like a flawless plan. So I accepted his offer, and off we went. We walked all the way down to the stream, shining flashlights, even though it was still half light outside. When we got there, I did my usual thing, looking around for the biggest rocks possible. Dad joined in, and for the next few minutes, we're picking them up and tossing them into the river, until Dad comes across one that looks particularly promising. I remember him distinctly saying, "Oh, we got a big one here." Then he took a step up onto one of the rocks at the edge of the river and kicked at one next to it, I guess trying to dislodge a piece that was cracked and coming away. Then in one fluid motion, he slipped, hit the rock he'd been standing on, then went crashing into the water. It sounds so perversely awful to think about now, but at the time I actually thought it was kind of funny. He slipped, and when he hit the rock on his side, he made this funny sort of sound. After he fell into the water, I honestly thought he'd just pull himself out right away, just like he did whenever he jumped in our pool in summer. Only problem was, he didn't. As I walked up to the river's edge, I caught a glimpse of him floating away downstream. Recalling that moment has suddenly made this very difficult to write about, so excuse me if the quality of my writing takes a sudden turn. But seeing him floating away, or rather, seeing a flash of the fabric of the jacket he was wearing just bobbing in the water as the fast-flowing river took him further and further away, that's what made me realize something was wrong. That's what had me running down the riverbank, desperately calling out his name and wondering why he wouldn't answer. The more I ran, the more I started to cry. By the time he was truly out of sight and I couldn't run anymore, I completely fell apart. I didn't want to accept he was gone, but at the same time, something in my gut just told me he was dead. But that didn't stop me from running for help. I ended up running all the way to my neighbor's yard, where they called 911, then carried me back home to Mom. Again, the memories of what happened next are difficult to recall, not in the sense that they're hazy, but because I can still remember how painful it was. The worst part was seeing Mom and my older sister hoping that somehow Dad had survived, lying unconscious in a freezing cold river for who knows how long. I wanted to share that hope so badly, but I couldn't. I think part of me always knew he was never coming back. So getting the news that his body had been found wasn't quite as devastating to me as it was to Mom and my sister, but it still almost destroyed our family. Even after all these years of trying to process it through therapy, self-help books, religion, and yes, even booze, we're still not really over what happened that Thanksgiving. It's something I think about every single day, without fail. Somehow, even the smallest, most inconspicuous little things bring the memories right back to me, sometimes at distressingly short notice. I guess this isn't the kind of story you're used to receiving as a submission. I can understand why some people might think this is more sad or tragic than outright horrifying. But to me, when I think of true horror, I think of that moment when I realized my dad wasn't okay. I think about that flash of his jacket I saw floating in the water and how quickly the current was dragging his unconscious body downstream. Sometimes I think I'd happily swap that memory for 1,000 nightly visits from Freddy Krueger. I'd happily share my apartment with a ghost or two, even more so if they'd help with utilities. Anything to get that picture out of my head. Anything to have had an actual goodbye with a man I never had a chance to really know. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, Let's Read Official, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. If you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. Check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all these stories in big compilations and save huge on data, located anywhere you listen to podcasts. Links in the description below. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.